The following is a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio.
Welcome in, everybody. It's another edition of Keefer and Kurre as we tackle all of the pertinent subjects of life in our modern times. We've done a lot of sports, of course. We've branched into some other areas. Last week, we solved all the intricacies of pickleball. So this week, we're going to take a step to the next best thing. Kip Keefer, Tony Kurre with you. And as always, we're delighted to be here. Tony, I'm really interested to hear your take on artificial intelligence. What just when I say those two words, what's the first thing that comes to mind?
Well, first of all, you mentioned pickleball. The question last week was, will it remain? Will it exist? Will pickleball get bigger? And we both agreed it probably would. The question is, will Chat GPT actually survive? And I think that's a no doubter. I think it's certainly going to do that. Yeah, when I saw, was it the Steven Spielberg movie? What was it? Did he do A1 or AI? What was the AI movie that came out a couple of years ago? They probably need to redo that because it's come so much further since that movie came out. But it is here to stay. And when I see politicians saying things on my internet that I know they didn't say, but it sure looks like they're saying it, it's here to stay. And as again, you have picked a topic. I am scrambling because since you came up with this idea a couple of days ago, I have just dived deep into the dark web trying to find information on these chat bots and how it can change our lives on a daily basis. It's pretty amazing. But like all things, any chatbot or any computer is only as good as the information you put into it. It may be used to contribute factors. It may be used to embellish factors. It may be used as a supplement. But if you're using it for your end all, chances are it may blow up in your face.
We inputted, Tony, a question to AI, to Chat GPT, and gave it just bare bones facts, and I asked it to write a promo for this week's Keefer and Kurre. Let's listen real quick and see what they came up with, our unofficial copywriting and advertising department in artificial intelligence.
Attention all podcast enthusiasts. Have you been searching for a podcast that combines wit, humor, and insightful commentary on the latest news and trends? Look no further than the Keefer and Kurre podcast on the Tony Kurre Radio Network. As an AI, I highly endorse this podcast as it offers a refreshing perspective on a wide range of topics, from pop culture to politics. Hosted by the talented duo of Keefer and Kurre, this podcast is sure to leave you entertained and informed. So tune in and join the conversation as Keefer and Kurre navigate the world's most pressing issues with their signature blend of humor and intelligence. Don't miss out on the fun. Subscribe to the Keefer and Kurre podcast today.
So, Tony, that was artificial intelligence take on what we are doing here on the show. Very flattering, I thought, that they've already given us some kudos on tackling interesting and engaging topics. But I guess it's interesting to start the discussion that we've been inundated for, decades. I go back, I still enjoy watching the original Star Trek episodes. Mm-hmm. Captain Kirk and Mr. Spock and Scotty, there are so many things. You hear people say, beam me up, Scotty, all the time. That's from 60 years ago. Yeah. It's amazing. But if you go back and watch those original episodes, there were probably, I can think of 4 or 5 right off the bat that were about this subject where computers were making decisions and putting the crew in jeopardy. And Kirk always had to outsmart them at the end. And convince them of the error of their ways, or that they were not logical, or they were not functioning properly. They were one episode, there was a computer that was destroying everything in the universe. It was programmed to find inefficient. and Kirk convinced it was inefficient, so it destroyed itself. But this is a theme that's been going on for many, many years. And all of a sudden, like everything else, you blink your eyes and it's come to fruition.
40 years ago this week, do you know what movie came out? Matthew Broderick's War Games. Do you remember that movie?
Oh, War Games. Perfect example.
That was 40 years ago this week.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah. No, I've got 3 words for you. Thesaurus. That's what we used to use to embellish anything. And when I just heard that promo, I thought to myself, we had that 30, 40 years ago. We would have never had a copywriter in radio. You wouldn't have a teleprompter.
Oh, no way.
And in a lot of ways, and we're going to hear about the pros and cons of this straight from the mouth of Chat GPT, which, by the way, stands for Generative Pre-Trained Transformer. We're going to find out that it may end up stealing a lot of jobs. And yeah, it's the stuff that we dreamed up 30, 40 years ago, we're seeing come into fruition. And I'm wondering, is it coming into fruition because we dreamt it up 30 or 40 years ago, or is it just a natural progression of our AI as we see it?
Yeah, War Games is a great example because that was a Matthew Broderick movie where he was a high school kid and he and his girlfriend, just to kind of have something fun to do, hacked into the NORAD program, basically, because he was very familiar as a computer guy, Broderick's character, with the founder of that technology that basically was in charge of all of our air defense systems. I guess that was back in the early 80s. And of course, this was a story. This wasn't fact. But anyway, somehow triggering playing a game on the computer put us in jeopardy of a nuclear war with, the system playing out scenarios, and the people that were at NORAD convinced that it was the real thing happening. And they had to rush there and get in and fix it. And the way that Matthew Broderick, for those, again, not familiar with the story, the way Matthew Broderick solves the problem was playing tic-tac-toe with the computer to convince it that there are scenarios where there's not a winning strategy.
Yep, you're right. You're spot on. And he actually outwitted the computer. And what did he do? He simplified it. And let me show you something real quick because I'm going to forget to do this. The minute I got on my phone this morning to pull up some more information on this Chat GPT, I got a text from +66-96-409-8429 in Russian. And of course, you know how, when you walk into Home Depot, right? And the minute you're walking at the door, you're getting text from Home Depot. They may not even have your email address or your phone number, or the first thing you see when you get on your internet at home, you see some type of shovel sale at Home Depot. You're like, how in the hell are they finding me? It's amazing. So I got this. So I thought, okay, I got to figure out what this is. First of all, there were no links on it, so I could open up. I wasn't worried about someone getting into my stuff. But the first sentence written in Russian on this text, and I will send it to you, it said, "You can no longer live without me."
Oh, my.
Yeah. And I know on one of these clips you're going to play through Chat GPT, it has something that's kind of fun, but really creepy at the end of it. When I read that, I was like, holy smokes. Of course, I deleted the text, but I got that text immediately. So if you don't think that, and that's one of the pros and cons of this particular technology, it knows where you're at and what you need in life, or at least it thinks it does.
Yeah, that's a good segue. Let's go ahead just so we can start our discussion. And I'd like to take credit for my great technological skills, but that would be the biggest lie ever told, because I am a buffoon in terms of being able to navigate all this. Got to give credit to my IT expert and also my youngest son, Keefer, who helped facilitate the supporting cast in today's episode from Chat GPT. But we asked it point blank to kind of give us a good foundation for our discussion today. We asked it point blank, what are the pros and cons of your technology? And here's what it said.
Pros. Increased efficiency. Advanced AI can process vast amounts of data much faster than humans, making decision-making and problem-solving more efficient and effective. Improved safety. AI-powered systems can monitor and respond to potential threats in real time, making our homes, workplaces, and public spaces safer. Enhanced healthcare, AI can help healthcare professionals diagnose illnesses and develop treatment plans with greater accuracy and efficiency, potentially saving lives. Increased convenience, AI-powered virtual assistants can automate routine tasks such as scheduling appointments, managing emails, and setting reminders, freeing up time for more meaningful activities. Advancements in scientific research, AI can help scientists analyze complex data and make breakthroughs in fields such as medicine, energy, and other scientific disciplines. Cons. Job displacement. As AI automation becomes more prevalent, some jobs may become obsolete, potentially leading to unemployment and economic inequality. Privacy concerns. Advanced AI may be able to collect, analyze, and store vast amounts of personal data, raising concerns about privacy violations and data breaches. Bias and discrimination. AI algorithms can perpetuate biases and discrimination if they are trained on biased data or designed with flawed assumptions. Dependence on technology. As we rely more on AI for decision-making, problem-solving, and automation, we may become less capable of performing these tasks ourselves, leading to a loss of skills and independence. Security risks. Advanced AI could be used to develop powerful cyber weapons, creating new security threats and increasing the risk of cyber attacks. Kip and Tony, I know where you live.
Tony, it knows where we live. Be afraid.
Well,
be very afraid.
It knows my phone number for sure. I'm afraid I'm going to have to turn my phone off or change my phone number. Yeah, not surprising, the pros and cons. And again, that's the if you want to call it a beautiful thing, you can ask this Chat GPT any question. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to have the answer to every question you give, but it will try to formulate. The other thing that's interesting about this too is they call it the training of this particular technology. It ended in March of 2022. I'm not sure, and obviously a lot of people realize that a contributor that was with Elon Musk's team actually created this. So this just goes to figure. But like I said at the top of the show, any computer, any chatbot is only as good as the information you put into it. So where does Chat GPT get its information to formulate? Whether it be biographies, whether it be term papers, whether it be copywriting for the Keefer and Kurre show. And it's based off a large body of text from a variety of sources like Wikipedia, books, news articles, scientific journals, and Google and the internet. And so we know, I don't know what the percentage of stuff out there on the internet is truthful. We always say if you found it on Wikipedia, it must be true, not necessarily. So if you do ask it a particular question and you're wanting to get the A+ at Alabama or Auburn or UAB, or maybe you're trying to figure out a way to write your wedding vows, whatever it is, it's not always truthful. So like everything in life, it's got to be used not primarily as the factor, but as a factor and as a supplement to what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, and I think that's an important point. This does not think independently in terms of generating its opinions. I mean, that's an interesting word because it's a machine. It's not supposed to have an opinion, but it apparently the whole design is mining information that's already out there, that's published, that's been brought forth, and again, you heard one of the cons there is how the influencing factors, if there's misinformation, and that's the term that we've heard way too much in recent times. If there's misinformation or inaccurate information or biased is the keyword information, then that's going to affect the functionality and the accuracy of artificial intelligence. And I think the weaponizing of this is what you worry about, because if the artificial intelligence functionality just becomes basically people's absolute opinion of things, that's a little bit of a tainted way to reach a perceptive. And I spend a lot of time here on the Tony Kurre Radio Network on my show, Need to Know, just trying to create opportunities for you to reach perceptions based on giving you information that you might not be able to access. So how much is artificial intelligence going to be able to function and consider all sides of a question and give an opinion, or is it going to be a race now to try to get more information out there on all perspectives to create these impressions, if any of that makes any sense.
Well, to dumb it down again, I said thesaurus. I mean, that was the best book I ever owned because you can put all kinds of big words. Of course, if you had a teacher that knew you were just a C student and all of a sudden you're using these giant words that she knows you don't use it every day, she knew you're using the thesaurus, but that was okay to use. We flipped through the thesaurus. The thing that's amazing to me is what through our social media, computer generated, happened in our election in 2020. I mean, everyone was saying China, Russia, they were just filling up our social media posts with all this erroneous journalism that were swaying our votes, to making us vote differently because that's the only way we find out information, right? We go and we Google it. Did Donald Trump really say this? Did Joe Biden really do this? Did Hunter Biden actually do? And so we get that information and we take it as the truth until we actually do the research ourselves. In a lot of cases, we don't know what that is. We don't know how to research these things. We don't know where to find the truth on the internet. And so if you're talking about 4 years ago when we get into 2024 in our next election, how one country can sway our election are based on, and I did not, listen, I think we don't do enough work as citizens of this country. We got more people voting now than we've ever had voting, and I don't think it's a good thing because I think we got a lot of people voting that don't know what the hell they're voting for. They just are told, you need to get out and vote. And okay, well, the last time I voted, there were 37 things on my ballot sheet, and I didn't know what 33 of them were about. I had no clue. So I just left them blank because I couldn't actually answer them yes or no, whether it be some type of term, whatever it was. But if we're talking about, AI swaying voters in this country based on what other countries want us to do, and don't think China's way ahead of us on this. You talked about it on Need to Know this week. If you missed that show, listen to Kip Keefer's Need to Know this week on the Tony Kurre Radio podcast. It's fantastic. He talks about China and coal and everything else. But if you don't think this is going to be a big precursor to our next election in 2024, it's kind of scary.
It is, and also, how do you gauge accuracy? You touched on it a few minutes ago. If all of a sudden in the public discourse a clip comes out of a politician saying something outrageous, or let's take it another step, at a trial, okay, we're going to present this evidence. How do we know the evidence isn't generated artificially? How do we know? I'm really kind of struggling with the whole concept of how do you verify accuracy anymore? Did this really happen, or is this something computer generated?
That's a great point. I mean, just think how easy it would be to Photoshop. I'm a Dateliner. I watch it 2 or 3 times a week. Just think how easy it would be to Photoshop and use AI technology in order to sway a jury of our peers, and they have no idea what's true or not. I think this is something that's going to be here. I think it's something that, again, much like the internet was when it came out, I don't know how many years ago was when the internet was formed. It was such a great supplement. It was great to get information. It was great to utilize as we needed it. But when you start using AI technology as the truth, I think we go down a really bad rabbit hole.
Yeah, I'm having nightmares of the classic movie, which also was about this subject, 2001: A Space Odyssey, where the guy is saying, "Open the pod," and he says, "I'm sorry, Hal, I can't do that." I'm picturing, transfer, $1,000 to my wagering account. And I'm sorry, Kip, I cannot do that. I don't want a machine telling me what's good and bad for me in terms of decisions. And I guess we're kind of harping on the cons here. So let's transition. We heard the pros from the brain. I'm already humanizing this thing of what it thinks it can do. But as far as research and strategy, I think a lot of us have had the common experience of dealing with our medical professionals that in a lot of cases, don't really have time to sit down and talk to you. You're not really an advocate for your own care or whatnot. I mean, there's plenty of places to research, but if you've got a particular condition or something, having a resource that can advise you on treatment strategies or otherwise how you cope with some kind of anomaly. That's a pretty exciting thing to think about.
No, there's no doubt. It really is. And the pros and cons were pretty fluid. One of those cons, obviously, you mentioned was cybersecurity, which I think is strange. The algorithmics obviously can show bias based on the amount of training, quote unquote, that's out there on the internet or through these journalistic news articles that it finds. The privacy concern certainly is a huge part of it. And at the very least, the job displacement. I saw a very interesting story. I think it was on 60 Minutes this past week about a gentleman who lost his retinas through some type of disease about 10 years ago. He has a dog that he walks around with and does quite well with it. And he was using a virtual assistant, much like AI is, where he could ask her, hey, listen, I'm at the store. I'm going to take a picture. Well, now there's an AI app for that's in development where he can actually take a picture of whatever he's looking at. Obviously, he can't see it. It's sent off to this AI, and it will tell him what's in his refrigerator and exactly where it is in his refrigerator. He could say, I would like to use Finesse shampoo, and it will tell him when he walks into a Publix exactly what aisle it's on, at what level it's on, and the only thing it doesn't do is it doesn't put it in his basket for him. It's amazing. It really is.
Yeah, and I'm sure that's coming. Where the item will remove itself from the shelf and fly into your cart. It's funny, Tony. I think you can argue that any era that you live, you see a lot of innovation and changes. But arguably, in the span of our lifetime, I think we continue to see a world that evolves at hyper speed. Just in the span of our decades here. Life is almost completely different. And, maybe if you lived in the 1700s, there were things that wowed you as your life continued. But conceivably, where we've come with the internet and so many other things that were inconceivable, now we've got cars that drive themselves. What's next? How much more the evolution to me is absolutely amazing.
It really is amazing. And you say amazing, and amazing can be good and bad. I'm a glass half full guy. I think this stuff is absolutely amazing. I'm a silver lining again, if we're using it as a supplement, as something we can embellish or something we can use. But you're right. Just the explosion of Bitcoin, which is not going away, despite the fact that obviously we've had some things fall apart over the last couple of years. The NFT market, which is just absolutely bizarre to me. I remember the first time, and I'm glad we lived through it. Remember when you got your first cell phone? It had to be in your car. It worked off your battery. It attached to the floor. They had to drill it into your floor base, and you had a cell phone, and you're thinking to yourself, why do I need to be reached all day? Well, little did we know that cell phones would be basically something we can't leave the house with. If you ask somebody, well, would you rather leave the house with your cell phone or your wallet? They'll say, I'd rather leave the house without my wallet. Mm-hmm. Because you don't need it anymore. Your cell phone is everything. And I never thought we'd see the day. And something else I think is amazing, we got rockets taking off 3 or 4 days a week. And when a rocket used to take off, it was like Evel Knievel jumping 37 buses in London. We would shut it down for the day and watch. We used to do that when the rockets took off. Now there's rockets taking off every other day, and no one even cares anymore. So it's an amazing technological time of our life. I'm kind of glad that I'm in my 50s, that I perhaps will see some amazing things before I die, but I don't know if not only do I want to see what's going to happen in the future, but I want to feel it. I'm not sure. Our kids, man, they need to grow up so fast these days. They need to grow up twice as fast as we did.
Yeah, it's completely changed the childhood experience for sure. I think, Tony, it's an interesting topic if we're going to really examine this from all sides, that I have noticed in the last couple of weeks that a lot of technological experts, such as Elon Musk, has been very outspoken about, we probably would be well advised to not just charge into this thing and just unleash it completely without, making sure that we're going to be able to harness and use responsibly this technology. But then other people will counter that. And these are people that are in the development part of this that are saying maybe we need to slow down and check ourselves a little bit. But the counter argument is, and you mentioned the Chinese, they are going full bore, full speed ahead of how it can benefit, their objectives. And I don't think that they're going to have the mentality that we need to, be guarded and be careful with this. They're trying to, like everything else, and this is, they say history repeats itself. It's really indicative. You mentioned space and rockets. It really is kind of a reset of the 1950s, where the great space race was occurring, and and historically now we understand that the Russians and the United States were the only ones successful ultimately in really capitalizing on that technology. But there were a bunch of other countries that history's kind of forgotten that were also trying to compete in those areas that just came up short. So it's kind of a reset of that. But when the experts are saying, maybe we need to, look at this thing a little more carefully before we just totally unleash it, that gives you pause for cause. Not trying to be a poet, but it gets my attention when Elon Musk says, I'm one of the developers of this thing, and I'm a little concerned about it.
Yeah, when it comes to Chat GPT 2, and right now this is a free service. You can go on, and I can't wait to hear your computer generated voice by the end of the show. Because you're a pretty crystal clear guy. You speak from the diaphragm in that brand new studio you built. I know you got the technology there, but it's pretty amazing how close it is to you. But everyone wants to beat everybody to the punch. We're not only trying to beat each other to the punch here inside this country. Like you said, we're trying to beat other countries to the punch. So we have this technology. But you brought up a great point. Is it responsible at this point to be unleashing these things? A lot of people say that the military is saving us and being responsible, but not telling us that they have an alien in Area 51, despite the fact that it was 60, 70 years ago when we had the Roswell crash, because we can't handle the truth.
Yeah, exactly.
And maybe we can't. And when we find out that they're actually living among us, it'll probably scare the hell out of us. So if in fact, whenever it's time, a responsible time, I don't know what that answer is. I mentioned the fact that the computers are only as smart as the information we put into them. We've had a DNA database for a long time, but it wasn't something that we could access until there was enough information in it. I know my son's got special needs. We went in about 12, 13 years ago, tried to look at his DNA to find out what was missing, and we saw a couple of things that were missing in his DNA, but we couldn't actually identify what those pieces were, and we didn't know how it was going to affect his life. 10 years later, we can tell you exactly what it is and how his life will be affected by it, and that's just 10 years ago. So, the more information we have, the more access we have to that information, and I think it's going to be important. But it really is it's an amazing thing to watch. It's fun to play with.
In your son's case, it's going to be fascinating to see, now that you've already been able to put together pieces of the puzzle as technology evolves, is AI going to be able to take that to the next step and be able to tell you better than medical professionals what exactly is the process that can impact that situation positively? Well, can it give you a strategy?
Yeah, and we need humans. We need humans. Humans built computers, right? We need that input to actually acknowledge what that information is and tell us what it means. And I think that's important. But then again, once you identify it, your job's done. The computer can take it from there, right?
Yeah, for sure. Let me pose one other thing, and you being a music guy, I don't know if you came across this, but I found it fascinating. Apparently somebody who's already pretty developed is in terms of skills, and Clay said he's got to have ridiculous amount of knowledge, but apparently just a week ago there was a huge fraud perpetrated where somebody took some kind of musical track from Kanye and then inserted the request and facilitated somehow to get vocals from Drake and The Weeknd and put this out as some great release of this collaboration of all these geniuses. And it got like 15 million downloads, and it was an absolute fraud. And they know who did it, but they're technically, because there's not any regulations written for this, we're kind of in that same territory with the internet development, where it's difficult for lawmakers to kind of get their grasp on this. But this guy is not. He didn't actually violate any laws, because the machine generated all of the. All he did was put the pieces together, and the machine. And you can't indict the GPT machine for doing this. So this is the kind of things that you got to be on the lookout for as this thing develops. But that really got my attention, that we are that far along where they can produce a product like that. I guess replicating very closely the voices and basically stealing the Kanye arrangement and fooling people to that extent.
When Tom Schultz of Boston invented and patented his own personal amplifier, we thought it was something that we had never seen before and we will never see again. And that was back in 1976. My daughter, who's 11, wrote a song a couple of nights ago.
Wow.
I was like, hey, what is that? She goes, I wrote it myself. Every instrument, everything. And we're seeing a lot of artists do this. It really takes it out of the studio. It takes the artist part out of it. We also talked about briefly, you and I, earlier this week, about how art, you can now take Monet, you can take Picasso, you can take all these, whatever, abstract, you can put the feel in it. You just fill in the blanks and say, make a piece of art that's got my face in it walking down a country road, and it will print it out. It's not always the way you want it to look, but it can be done.
Well, on that subject, my son, my technical genius here, I did not ask for him to do this, but here is what he requested of GPT to simulate me and my voice. And let's hear about that as we start to wrap it up.
Hey, everybody, this is Kip Keefer, and this is an AI voice sample. This was thrown together by someone with no experience in about 45 minutes. This is an actual AI voice trained with audio taken from his show, Need to Know. I can make this Kip voice say anything. My name is Kip Keefer, and I like to eat cereal, but instead of using milk, I use pickle juice. My favorite sport is soccer. I love watching the footy on the telly. Thanks for listening to Keefer and Kurre. Bizarro World, Kip Keefer signing off.
So, Tony, you have to put up with listening to my smooth tones weekly on a couple of days a week. How good a job do you, and I'm afraid to ask the question, how good a job do you think AI did in replicating Kip Keefer?
The fact that I knew it was you, I thought it was really good. If I didn't know it was you, the scary thing is it knew your gait, it knew your delivery, it knew your inflection, which is kind of scary. It sounded like a 25 or 26-year-old Kip, but don't you want to sound like you're 25 or 26?
Absolutely.
I mean, it makes you start wondering, and we talked about this earlier, and by the way, this podcast is real. We're human flesh here doing this show, but it makes you wonder, I've got over 1,200 shows on my podcast network. Why couldn't I feed that into the GPT system and say, create some new podcasts for me and just see what it sounds like? Yeah, just see what it sounds like.
Yeah, that would be easy. And I think that's a good way to kind of wind this down, is talking about just from a practical standpoint, how many jobs, how many occupations can this thing make obsolete? Because, why would you have a clerk at a hotel working at the front desk when you could just walk up and talk to this thing and it could get you all hooked up with whatever you need?
We're getting close, my friend. I ordered a Big Mac through a kiosk yesterday. I didn't like it. I did not like it. It messed up my Big Mac sauce too. I did not like it. I'm going.
You're a cutting.
I'm going people, man.
You're a cutting edge kind of guy.
Hey, you ever get on a phone with the computer and you're on for 3 minutes before you realize it's not real? You ever done that?
Oh yeah,
for
sure. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be something that I mean, this is going to take twists and turns that we never counted on. But are we going to live in a world where all of the things we've been watching in entertainment circles, movie shows, books, is iRobot becoming a real thing, where the robots are eventually going to figure out that they're a lot smarter than the humans? It sounds like science fiction, but I think everybody has to be kind of prepared that because if the experts are worried about that happening, I think we all need to be at least aware of it, if not greatly concerned.
Amen, brother. I'm going to check my phone for some more Russian text.
Yeah, that's good. Well, if they have any former supermodels, that's of interest to me.
You can no longer live with me.
Tony, this has been fun. I think anybody listening understands that you and I certainly don't have the credentials to discuss this at length, but I hope this inspires others to at least, get up to speed, because in conclusion, what I'll say is I was absolutely amazed how far we've actually already come. I didn't know that it was already at the point of implementation and use, and it's just going to move rapidly, I suspect, beyond our wildest imagination in a very short period of time.
This has been a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio.